It's the final race of the European triple header, and we are at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Last time out, Lando Norris took victory on the iconic streets of Monaco, closing the championship gap to just 3 points. Now we return to a track that the drivers know exceptionally well, and we're here to bring you everything you need to know ahead of the Spanish Grand Prix. Welcome to the weekend warm-up. Hello everyone and welcome to the weekend warm-up, and welcome to the pit lane and my lovely guests, my co-hosts Ruth Buscombe and Alex Brundle. We're back in Barcelona. We're used to this being the first of the Europeans, but it's good to be back, isn't it, Ruth?
It really is. As an engineer, I don't know how many thousands of laps I've done of this in simulation world and how many times I've been here. I think it's 15 years worth of coming. It truly does feel like coming home for everyone in motorsports.
Yeah, it's home base, isn't it, for European single-seater racing. Such a great test track, and drivers will know, of course, the layout extremely well. Those who had a difficult time in Monaco will be very much looking forward to something that looks a little bit more conventional this weekend.
And can you believe we're a third of the way through the season, which is crazy to think, but a third of the way through and only 25 points separating our top three, with Oscar Piastri, of course, heading it up. It's close.
It's so close. And this, you know, the Barcelona race always sees kind of, I'd say, turning points in championships historically, and upgrades. Everything can change from here, and it really sets the tone going into those final races before shutdown.
And it's not just the driver standings that are close. Over in the team standings as well, Alex, McLaren might be a little bit ahead with a 172-point lead, but that P2 is tight. 5 points separating the Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari teams.
Yeah, it's really tight this weekend, and of course there are key changes as well with regards to the technical directive that's coming this weekend that's going to change the running order as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Should we talk a little bit more about that technical directive? You might have heard swirls of what is coming, looking at this flexi-wing situation. Alex, talk us through it, please.
So Formula One cars in the modern era make more and more front downforce as they go faster. Teams have been mitigating this to try to get a car which is balanced everywhere in both the low and the high speed by having the front wing flex and ditch a little bit of downforce at the higher speeds. The FIA, though, this weekend have tightened up the controls of this. There are 3 controls that the FIA have in place. They load one side of the wing, both sides of the wing, and then the rearmost element of the wing. On the first 2 tests, they've taken 5 mil off both of the tolerances, and on the final test, they've taken a couple of mil off. What this will essentially do is reduce the amount that the teams can manage the balance with the flexibility of the front wing. We do not know yet, we will only know when the teams are out on track, who this is affecting and how much it's affecting them, but it's been described by Fred Vasseur and James Vowles as a key change in the potential running order of the series. So really interesting weekend in terms of the engineering as it's going to play out.
Lots to be seen out on track, but Ruth, just to give us a little insight of how we think this could impact the teams and the drivers, are they going to have to be relining the car to an extent?
Yeah, so if you were using the maximum allowable deflection and then you were reined back by this technical directive, that's basically a reduction of a third amount of flex, which is quite a big impact in terms of the balance for the drivers, for the engineers, in terms of the setup. And I think we'll see that kind of an impact on lap times. We'll see that will make a small change, but we are talking potentially in the order of about a 10th. I believe Carlos and Alex mentioned that it would, or George Russell said it would only be about a 10th. But a 10th could be the difference between pole and not pole in that midfield fight. So it's going to be such an interesting one to see which teams do change, if any, and how they adapt to that change with the regulations that come into play from this race weekend.
A 10th of a second is our biggest pole-winning margin so far in Formula One this year. So yeah, it's still a decent amount. If you're a second off the pace, you're miles away in modern Formula One.
Oh gosh, some excitement to come when we see the cars out on track. But before we get further into this weekend, let's have a little look back at how things went down in Monaco.
This is the Monaco Grand Prix, and the game has changed.
The two-stopper is going to throw things wide open.
The glitz, the glamour, they're wonderful, but we're here for the motor race. Formula One goes racing on the streets of Monaco. Close between Norris and Charles Leclerc. And Norris keeps the lead.
Bortolanto going around the outside of Antonelli, and that is a move. Rookie on rookie, up the inside again.
Into the wall.
Jimmy, push me out.
What has happened to Gasly?
No break.
No brakes, race over.
Teammates together have a chance to back off and give gaps for free pit stops.
Both racing bulls pulled off the strategy so many were talking about.
We do the same thing.
Sainz is backing off.
I don't love the tactics. It's not against the rules.
Albon is going to return the favour.
He's driving dangerously slow.
Maybe you give him a surprise moment, George.
Russell past Alex Albon.
So we need to give that position back. I'll take the penalty.
Ah, cynical. Don't like it.
A chastening day for Mercedes.
Norris is slow.
He's so close.
Max is backing me up.
In comes Verstappen. Norris leads, chased all the way by Charles Leclerc. Lando will join the legendary winners of this race.
Monaco, baby!
As ever, you can catch even more highlights and reaction on YouTube on the post-race show, and even more on F1 TV, so make sure you head over there. Lando Norris winning around the streets of Monaco. I mean, that is something that these drivers dream of, and he's ticked it off.
He looked a different Lando all weekend long. So much confidence walking through the paddock and so much confidence out on track. Even when you see his pole-winning lap, he's bouncing over the curbs and attacking the braking zones, even having sort of the presence of mind and the confidence right at the end of the Grand Prix to set the fastest lap across the line. And he'll be taking all of that confidence into this weekend.
He definitely looked revitalised after that weekend, didn't he? You could see he was pumped by it. But now turning our attention to this weekend, how suited do we think their car will be around here, Ruth?
Well, it's just a very good car, isn't it? We've seen it suited to a lot of tracks. We've seen, you know, Lando's own driving style, the high-speed corners, particularly turn 3, turn 9 here, ones where he can extract a little bit of pace, maybe even out of his own teammate. And I think he's always like this circuit. I actually met Lando for the first time when he was a young lad handing out Haribo during winter testing about 10 years ago. And he told me even back then when he wasn't even a race driver, I don't think he'd even got the reserve, just how much he likes driving this track. They all do. But that's the problem, isn't it? Everybody knows this track, and you know, Raskas, he made 0.139 seconds off of Charles Leclerc in one corner, and so I think everyone's going to be chomping at the bit to prove that this is their home, and they are also the nominal kings of Spain.
You know, McLaren are strong everywhere, and that's been their strength throughout this year, is that, you know, you've seen Ferrari come to the fore in Monaco, you saw Verstappen very strong in Imola, but McLaren are always there. The final sector, though, of this racetrack will really, I believe, reward where they're particularly strong, which is in the rear tyre management throughout the lap. Only 3 points, though, between he and Oscar Piastri. It's going to be interesting to see, with this being a more front-limited circuit that Lando says he doesn't enjoy so much, how it's going to play out. Lando bringing all the confidence in, but perhaps a racetrack of the two drivers that would suit Piastri better.
As you mentioned, only 3 points now between Oscar and Lando. Confident Lando, but we know that Oscar has this quiet confidence constantly. Ruth, what do you think the mentality is, not only for the drivers, but in the team as a whole?
Competitive, but as a team, you really want to maximize that competition. You know, when you look at the dynasties of Formula One, it's ones where they've managed so well, kind of dancing on the edge of healthy competition across the garage without it spilling over. And you look at years where that's gone really well, where it's gone maybe not so well. 2016 here is a good example of when the mighty Mercedes had a double DNF into turn 1, and this young lad named Max Verstappen won his first race. So I think it's going to be competitive, but we've never seen it spill over with the two of them into kind of on-track action. I'm excited to see who bounces back on top, because you say there's different elements of this track. It has a bit of everything, right? That make it so interesting. And historically, as teams, Sector 3 in Barcelona is a really great reference point for have you built a good race car. And by that we mean aerodynamically efficient, good handling, something that's a good all-rounder, a quarterback, if you may.
Well, Lando comes into this weekend off the back of his victory in Monaco, and last year he got pole here as well. Alex, take us through it.
He certainly did. Lando Norris with a brilliant pole position here last year in his McLaren. Across the line then, 320 kilometers per hour is the peak speed, just over actually, that they make down towards turn one. This the limitation of ride height around the whole track. It's fourth gear in turn one, and listen, short shift through the exit of turn two. That's how they're managing that rear tyre. It's extreme load then, one of three extreme loads through the right front. Turn four is an early entry, and it's way more uphill than we give it credit for as they make their way through mid to exit of four. Five, looking a lot more banked when you stand trackside than it does on the cameras as well. Turn six is an easy drive through. Down to seven, one of the key challenges on the outside is not finding yourself out there on that sausage curb on the outside. Like Caxa, turn 9, 260 kilometers an hour, and then it's 75 meters, the braking point, down towards turn 10. This, that final sector that we're talking about, where I believe the McLarens are going to be really strong, because you have to deliver traction again and again through turn 10 and 11, and then look at this, the drivers carrying their body weight with the right-hand side of their neck muscles as they make their way at 270, 280 kilometers per hour. Look up to the right-hand side, instant feedback here at Barcelona as to how you've done with the timing tower, which is just at the end of the pit lane.
Oh, I like that. Thank you very much, Alex. Well, it was Lando that took pole last year, but it was Max Verstappen that took victory, and he was asked earlier today about his prospects this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully we can be a bit more competitive here. Hopefully, well, from my side I hope at least that it will be a bit more similar to Imola, but it's a bit difficult to tell. I know, of course, the competition that we have, from the other teams. I know where they're strong at. And from us, I think we just have to see if we can balance the car or try and put it again in a nice window so we are not hard on the tires. And yeah, it becomes drivable where then, you feel comfortable and you can push a bit more to the limit. And I think that's what we'll try to achieve.
Well, that was Max Verstappen. He won last year, and he actually won the last 3 years at this circuit. But what do we reckon for this weekend? How do you think the Red Bulls will be faring around here, Alex?
On paper, this is a circuit that wouldn't suit Red Bull. There's a big variety of corner speeds, which is where they've suffered throughout previous races. When you look back at Imola, where they were strong, a lot of short corners that were sort of relatively close in terms of their apex speed. The big curveball for them, though, is the technical directive that's come in and how it will affect the competitive order. We don't know if they're going to gain a lot of performance as a result. They'll be hoping that they will be, and that puts them back, along the field, in terms of the rest of the field, in a relative position to have good balance. So that's going to be a really interesting one to watch this weekend.
I mean, Max always goes so well round here, and I think the smoothness of the track will help them. But one advantage McLaren have had in previous races that as a strategist I've always used here is having two cars up the front here. It's not a one and done strategy here. There is potentially some intrigue there, and I think it'll be a really critical weekend for Yuki to make sure he can get that car into Q3, make sure that that car is at least there to try and help, because with McLaren they always have those two cars at the front, and we can't leave Max alone if you're a Red Bull pit wall.
It's over 90% here, the conversion between the front row and the race victory. So that they need Yuki to assist it strategically, definitely, but also in the battle between Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes in the leading cars in the field.
And who do you think the biggest competition and challenge for the Red Bull team is going to be this weekend? Is it going to be Ferrari? Is it going to be Mercedes? What do we reckon?
I mean, definitely McLaren, right? But McLaren
Let's put them
are
to
going to
the
be right up
side.
front. But putting McLaren aside, it's going to be interesting. In theory, there are two different theories on how Mercedes are going to go this weekend. Firstly, it's going to be pretty hot all weekend. In general, George has been really clear, George Russell, that when it's hotter, they struggle. But we're on the harder end of the compound range here, which should help to ditch a little bit of that tyre surface temperature and maybe help the Mercedes to perform. For Ferrari, I think they're just going to miss downforce here this weekend, as they have done everywhere but Monaco. It's just too soft at this stage. They can't run the ride out of it. So I think Red Bull versus Mercedes behind McLaren is going to be the order. Not to preempt our predictions.
Yeah,
at the
can
end.
you slow down a bit there? And Mercedes really need a bounce back this weekend, don't they? Because last weekend was a bit of a disaster for the team. The first time they've not scored since Australia 24. It was a lost weekend for them.
It was, and it was lost on Saturday, right? And I think that's one thing that, potentially, I fully agree. Race pace here, they're going to be a little bit concerned with the temperatures, but they have two drivers that are very technically good across one time lap. And actually, if you can get two drivers up here in qualifying, track position is important. Yes, overtaking is slightly easier than it once was since we changed that chicane. But I think that will be what Mercedes will be trying to focus on, try to get two cars into Q3 as high up as they can. And then just as we mentioned with Red Bull, they're in a position that they can use those two cars together on Sunday. But I think it will be tough for them to trouble the front row.
But just as with Yuki, they've got to try and get Mercedes, got to try and get Antonelli towards the front of the field here. He had a really difficult Monaco, might have taken a slight knock in confidence as a result of that, and they need Antonelli at what is a circuit he'll know really well, a more conventional racetrack to be delivering, because Charles and Lewis are going to be delivering close to the potential of the Ferrari.
Right, let's move a little bit down the order now, and let's hear from Alex Albon.
What are the hopes this weekend? Obviously, it was a really good time last weekend, but is it another double points potentially on the cars this weekend?
I think it's not off the cards. I think this is our weakest track to date that we've got to, historically speaking, that is. So maybe a little bit less optimism in terms of results, a bit more optimism in terms of exploring the car a bit more. I think FP1, FP2, it's a good chance to kind of play around with the car and see where we think we can just test some things. Obviously, we still want to score points, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is more around the FIA directive of where we're all going to fall out.
And if I can quickly ask, how was your dinner with George?
Yes, he ordered a lobster pasta, which
Nice.
When he said that, I was like, are you sure? I had the carbonara. To be fair, I wanted to kind of play it that way, but it was Wagyu carbonara, which I've never had before. And then, but he did miss out on the dinner, on the dessert, so it kind of equaled itself out. But yeah.
Men of fine tastes.
Yeah, good evening. We didn't go out, so I think we saved some money there as well.
Lovely. Thanks, Alex.
Well, we have some lovely feature interviews lined up for you with Alex Albon, Lando Norris, and Chief Designer Rob Marshall coming on Sunday in your pre-race show. So make sure you tune in for those. That was you sitting down with them, Alex. Looking forward to that a lot. Let's get into Williams a little bit more then. Alex saying he thinks this will be their worst track.
He was actually a little bit concerned when I spoke to him earlier on that it would appear as though the technical directive had negatively affected Williams, when actually this circuit not conducive to the car. I don't see why he would say that on paper from where we've seen that Williams at, usually pretty good in the fast corners, and it's been strong almost everywhere, especially with the latest set of upgrades which came in Imola. So I think potentially playing down their chances a little bit. Says they found a load more rear downforce at the beginning of this year, and it's given them a lot of setup options to play with, and that is where he thinks that extra little bit of pace has come from. But they've played down their chances throughout this year and then been pretty much everywhere from sort of race 4 onwards.
Absolutely. I'm kind of getting used to them playing down their expectations, and then you come and speak to them on Sunday and they've had a fantastic result. Alex Albon won't actually be in his car for FP1. It'll be Victor Martins stepping in to his car instead. And over on the other side of the garage, home hero, Carlos Sainz. I mean, it's always special coming to your home circuit, but there's also a lot of pressure that comes with it. Ruth, pressure is a privilege, that's what you always say?
Yeah, I think you do see a split between the drivers, really quite a black and white split. Some always go better at their home race and some always struggle. And I think Carlos really does love being here. I think he loves sharing the track with Fernando, his hero turned competitor. And like I say, yeah, I'm not counting out Williams, because it also, if there's some kind of strategy involved, there's some kind of extension of the tyres, you know, they always seem to be there. They work well as a team. They work well to really maximise the package that they have. And yeah, and I think, you know, James Vowles as well has also got a pretty strong record here in his former role as a head of strategy at Mercedes. So I'm not counting them out either.
From one home hero to another, Fernando Alonso, let's see what he had to say earlier on in the press conference.
You had a tremendous reception at the fan forum last night. You have a couple of wins, 7 podiums here. Just what makes this one different for you?
Well, home Grand Prix, so it's different to all drivers when you race in front of your home crowd and friends, family are normally in the grandstands or in the paddock, and yeah, you want to deliver something always extra at your home place, and we know Barcelona very well. It's not only my case. I think all Formula One drivers, we did a lot of laps here, a lot of testing. So yeah, it's a circuit that we know very well, and we push the limits, from FP1 to the race.
So what do you think will happen this weekend from an Aston Martin point of view? Let's focus on the positives from the last 2 races since you introduced the upgrade. How much of a performance step forward is it?
Let's see. I think Barcelona will tell us a little bit more about the new package. Imola was a step forward for sure, but also I think we ran the medium tires, and that helped us in qualifying. And then in Monaco is such a special place, and Saturday is obviously key part of the weekend, and we put some good laps on Saturday as well. So Barcelona with a more normal weekend we will discover where are we in terms of performance. But I think everyone will bring also some upgrades here, especially on the new regulation with the front wing, and let's see how much affects everyone on the grid.
I have to say, there are so many fans here today for both Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz, which is of course lovely to see. But Fernando Alonso really not having a strong start to this season, his worst start to a season in 10 years. He said that he's the unluckiest driver. That's quite a statement, isn't it? But equally, 3 DNFs this year. Can he turn things around this weekend?
It's so difficult, isn't it? Because, he's not lying. When you look at that car, you look at the performance of that car in the low corners, it's not where anybody at Aston Martin want them to be there. We've won here in 2013 when he was at Ferrari. I was a lowly strategist back in the factory here by doing a 4-stop over another team 3-stop. And those strategic options, if there's any whiff of him getting points, I am sure he will do it. But I think it's going to be quite a tough weekend, and it is a tough weekend when you're at your home Grand Prix and it doesn't. Oh, look, he was so happy. And it doesn't work. But either way, the Hamon will be good.
They had Adrian Newey in the garage back in Monaco, and as well as being described as a boost for the team, which I'm sure it was, the feedback has been incisive after the weekend. He's made a couple of things clear already. Their driver in the loop simulator is not up to par. He made a really interesting comment, which was, your wind tunnel can be as good as you like. It's all about the designs you put in it. Giving a team already, there's one thing having a boost, which is kind of neither here or there, but it's always great to see a face everybody knows in the garage. But the key point is that he's already working on those processes and those potential designs for 2026. That really the light at the end of the tunnel for Aston Martin. The car not turning at slow speed. The strategy last weekend in Monaco, Alonso, even before the retirement, was extremely frustrated over the radio with where the team put him and how the team played it. So they'll be hoping to try to apply as many of those points as possible as soon as possible. But they've also made it clear, the team, that actually a lot of that is going to take a decent amount of time for the team to actually be able to implement.
A very difficult start to the season for Fernando Alonso, and also not looking too good on F1 Fantasy either. Stroll is now double the value of Fernando Alonso on F1 Fantasy. So this is also just a reminder to lock in your drivers for this weekend. You're looking like...
Me and Ruth need to get off the bottom of the table.
Oh, come on, guys.
Of the F1 of the F1
I need
presenters.
to update mine. I feel like I've been doing too much actual strategy. And I haven't been focused enough on my F1
Sounds like
fantasy strategy.
So Ruth
Well,
and
it's
I
a very
will lock-
racing driver comment to say, right?
Ruth and I will be locking in before qualifying. This weekend, we're going to get back on it.
Well, make sure you do, and make sure you do at home as well. Let's now talk racing balls, going from some of the most experienced drivers on the grid to some of the least experienced. But Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson both getting career best finishes out in Monaco last time, which was really lovely to see. I have to say, there was such a positive energy around the team. The question is, what can they do around here?
I think pretty well. You know, they have a car which is extremely drivable. They'll be really happy. I think specifically about the qualifying performance back in Monaco, because it's one thing to play the team game and get both drivers in the points, which they did very, very well with Hadjar and Lawson. But the two drivers around Monaco, you know, two extremely young drivers, both delivering a good enough qualifying performance to put themselves in the action to be able to do that. A drivable car around here should help them keep the tyre in what is so often a race of tyre management.
Very nicely done by the racing balls. Let's now head over to the Haas team and hear from Esteban Ocon.
Hi Esteban, good to see you here in Spain. Obviously a really great result last time out for yourself in Monaco. I mean, what are the hopes looking ahead into this weekend that you might get to achieve something similarly impressive?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was obviously a very good weekend. Nice to come back with some points, you know, for me and for the team. Yeah, we maximized that weekend. Obviously, very different challenge here. You know, much hotter, a track much harder in terms of tires. So yeah, we need to see exactly where we land. I'm not going to be driving FP1 also. I'm letting the car to Rio on that one, so I will be back for FP2. But yeah, we obviously need to understand quite a lot of things. It's not a given that we'll be able to replicate this here, but we'll try our best to maximize the weekend.
What sort of things are you looking then to particularly understand or learn to understand?
Yeah, we've had some difficulties, you know, with the balance of the car onto the normal tracks. The front end of the car has been difficult, you know, for us in Imola and tracks like that. So here would be a good test, I think, for us to really understand and to hopefully improve on things.
Great, thanks Esteban.
Thank you.
As Esteban mentioned there, Rio Hirakawa will be stepping into his car in FP1 for his third FP1 appearance, which is not bad going at all. Let's talk a little bit about Haas and what we think they can do. It is close in those championship standings, 4 points between Haas and the Racing Bulls. Alex, what can the team do around here?
It is a tricky circuit if you're struggling a little bit with the balance. The combined braking and turning has been their sort of Achilles heel throughout the year. So it's going to be all about whether they can get a car underneath those two drivers. They've got two really experienced drivers, or two great drivers behind the wheel of it. Behrman delivering pace and Ocon bringing all of his experience in. Much is going to relate to how, for example, Alpine performed this weekend. They had such a difficult weekend in Monaco. Gasly saying he hoped it was all about just the bumps, the nature of Monaco, and they should be back where they were in previous rounds here, but time will tell.
You mentioned Alpine there, only 1 point between Alpine and Sauber. I mean, we talk about how close it is at the top of the team standings. It's close even at the bottom. What are their chances here, both Alpine and also your former team Sauber?
Well, again, I want to see tomorrow when we get the full documentation of all the upgrades. As teams, we used to have to take fancy photos, and now it's beautifully easy because we just get a nice document that tells us. I believe Sauber are bringing an upgrade, and it is those tiny, you know, marginal gains that make a difference. But this track does punish cars that are missing in that downforce sector, and it's the final sector 3 that is the worst one. So you can actually be looking okay, sector 1, sector 2, and then when you're in qualifying, it's that sector 3 lap. I think they're going to have to take every bit of learning, every lap, and really maximize it in both teams. And I think Franco as well is going to look forward to try to go back to a track that's a little bit easier than a Monaco as a rookie coming in.
Yeah, definitely. I think the rookies will be breathing out a little bit to be back on familiar grounds here. Let's have a look now at the schedule for the weekend, shall we? And let's see how we're going to take you through the Spanish Grand Prix. So we have practice 1 and practice 2 tomorrow, and we will be on air from 1:15 and 4:45. Then Saturday in the morning, we will have practice 3. Join us from 12:15, and then we go live with our pre-qualifying show from 3:30 ahead of qualifying at 4, and then stick with us for the post-qualifying show as well. And then the big one, race day on Sunday, pre-race show. We will be live from 2 p.m. for a 3 p.m. race start. And then we will be bringing you all the analysis straight after on the post-race show, which you can also catch on YouTube. So make sure you do join us for that. Right, before we wrap things up, you know what's coming, because Alex, you're already pulling faces. Predictions for this weekend?
Can you call me back after FP1 when I've seen all of the new front wings? It's going to be all about that. If you ask me to predict it right now, I'm still going to put which is exactly what you're asking me to do. I'm still going to put McLaren out front purely on the basis of tyre management and where they've been at for the rest of the season. But we could see a totally different running order. We're going to have to crunch the numbers here. This is not a guess. This is one we're going to have to work out through the weekend.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really boring answer, though, isn't it? But yeah, on paper, right now, I would say it's Lando, Oscar, Max, but could all change in FP1, and it rounded here in Formula 1, it usually does.
Okay, well, I'm going to change things up just for some variety, and I will say Max Verstappen, just for a little bit of change amongst us. Thank you very much, guys, for taking us through the weekend warm-up. That is all from us. But as I said, do make sure you join us through the rest of the weekend. We'll be keeping you up to date on all of those potential upgrades, front wing changes, and all the other news and updates here in the paddock. Can't wait to get into it. We'll see you soon.
We are back in Barcelona. This track, such a test.
Welcome to Spain.
Who's bravest on the brakes? Oh my word! Russell around the outside. That is Formula 1. A capacity crowd cheers. Norris goes around the outside to second place. Wild stuff.
This is the Spanish Grand Prix.
Max Verstappen wins once again.